What's up, YouTube? Mr. Llama here, and today we're going to be discussing immunities. What are immunities? How do they work? And why are they so frustrating to deal with? Because I'm sure so many of you have run into them in your playthrough of the game, and you're sitting there and you're like, I'm a cold source and I do cold damage, and this guy's immune to cold, and why can't I hurt him, right? So we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about all of that. So the first thing that we'll mention is, what is an immunity? Immunity is when a monster has over 100% resistance, basically, right? So if you look at your resistances, I have like 35, 32, 43. If this is over 100%, which it can't ever be for the character, but for a monster it can, then it will have immunity to that, which means it takes 0 damage. So for instance, if we go out here, these Fallens take 0 fire damage. This Gargantuan Beast takes 0 cold damage, okay? It is impossible to deal fire or cold to these guys while they have these immunities on right there. Now, I do lightning damage, so I can hurt them and kill them. But if I did fire damage or cold damage, then I would run into issues right there, right? So that's the first thing to note. The second thing to note is when you get to unique monsters, and I can go out here and actually run over to one if he's still alive. Nope. Here we go. This will work. When you get to these unique monsters, you can see they have affixes, such as this person is extra fast, cold enchanted, and spectral hit. So what does that do to the immunities? Well, we have a handy dandy little sheet right here. Stone Skin is plus 50% physical res. Fire Enchanted is plus 75 fire res. Cold Enchanted plus 75% cold res. Lightning Enchanted, same with there. Magic Resistant plus 40% fire, cold, and lightning res. And Spectral Hit is 20% to fire, cold, and lightning res. Okay? So, that monster had Spectral Hit and Cold Enchanted. So on top of being cold immune, it has an additional 95% cold resist and an additional 20% fire and lightning resist. Basically, I am never breaking that immunity for cold. Okay, and we'll get into kind of why as we move on, right? So let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about this, because this sheet is actually very nice. I will have the sheet down below for you guys, so don't worry about that. So the first thing is, how do we break these immunities? Okay, and the first thing that you can do is there's 4 ways to break immunities, and technically a 5th right now, but it's probably a glitch that's going to go away. So the first thing is Conviction. Conviction is a paladin aura. It also comes with Infinity, which is a rune word that a lot of people like to give to their mercenaries. And so if I hire my mercenary right here, if I get a little gold and then hire my mercenary right here, I don't have any gold. All right, let me, perfect. If I get some gold and hire my mercenary and give him Infinity, he now has level 12 Conviction. So if we go out here, you'll notice these monsters now have their immunities broken, right? These Fallens no longer say immune to fire. This Dark Hunter doesn't say immune to cold. Anybody who has Infinity on it no longer has that. Oh, there's Bishi Bash. I was looking for him. Right? So that's nice right there, because that will lower. Additionally, lower resist is another way to do this. So in the event that you don't have your mercenary, you can either have a necromancer, or you can get a wand that has plus to lower resist charges. You can set this to a hotkey, and I can actually go out, find a monster that has immunities, and cast this on that monster to break the immunities. Now you'll notice that didn't actually break the immunities on those guys, and that's because they were too strong. However, the combination of my lower resist, and it did break it on that archer, plus the Conviction did break it. And that's because these can stack in that capacity. So once again, if we go back, Conviction can lower cold, fire, and light res, but does not reduce poison res. Up to a maximum of 150%. Lower resist can lower cold, lightning, fire, and poison res. So it can do all the resistance, and it goes up to a maximum of 70%. Once again, you can stack both of these so you can have up to 220% resistance subtraction. Amplified damage can come from a variety of sources, but this lowers monster resist by 100%. Generally, it's going to be the Necro Curse, but you can get like weapons that cast amplified damage on striking and things like that. And Decrepify, another Necromancer curse, lowers their physical resist as well. These do not stack, of course, because they're both curses and you can only have one curse active at the same time. Okay, so the way that this works is against a normal monster that is not immune, it will reduce resistances up to this amount. But against an immunity monster, it actually is affected and it only functions at 1/5 of its strength. So what does this mean? This means if I have a conviction paladin that has a minus 100% conviction and it goes up against an immune monster, it will only take off 20% of that immune monster's resistances. If that is enough to break the immunity, perfect, it breaks it. If not, then it's not going to break it. So it's not going to take that 100 off. So if that monster has 225% cold res and I have minus 100% for my conviction, that monster still has 205% cold res. Not broken, right? Now, this is right here, and that shows right here, the maximum effect on immune monsters is 44% if you're combining lower resist and conviction at their max levels, 20% for physical, and 14% for poison. Okay? Hopefully that makes some sense. And it's very helpful to you. This is the big piece that you have to note. And I said there was one more that actually does have an effect, and right now that is Cold Mastery is actually breaking immunities at the moment when it shouldn't be. Generally, Cold Mastery is supposed to apply only if the monster is not cold immune, but right now it's applying even when it is immune at that 1/5 rate. So if you have minus 200% Cold Mastery, it's doing minus 40% on the immune monster and breaking the immunity. And I'm guessing that this is also with all minus enemy gear res. So a Raven Lore, a Phoenix, a Crescent Moon, anything with minus enemy percent, I would imagine is also breaking immunities. This is not supposed to be intended in the previous versions and stuff. We'll see if they fix it going forward or what they do. But that is currently how it is affecting it. Now, all of this goes into some ideas and questions of, okay, Mr. Llama, so I have all this information. I understand how to break immunities. I've got my conviction and whatever, but why am I not breaking as many immunities as I think I should be? Or why are cold immune monsters never breaking, but light immune monsters are always breaking? And this is where you can actually look and see the resistances of all of the monsters and all of the mobs and see why certain things break. So the first thing that you'll note is immunities in Nightmare. You can break every immunity in Nightmare with conviction and lower res. And this right here says this table's great. Breaks with lower resistance, breaks with conviction, breaks with lower resist and conviction. So this is if you have one, the other, or both of them, and it'll tell you which monsters you can break. So you can see in Nightmare, no problems whatsoever. The issues generally come when you get into Hell. I guess poison, you can't break every poison. There are a couple of skeleton archers that you cannot break right there. But the real issues come when you get to Hell. And the biggest issue generally comes from cold immune monsters in Hell, right? And this is just because you can once again see how high these resistances are for these monsters. Remember, I said if it's over 100%, you are not going to be breaking it. Right? Or if it's over 100%, it's immune. And if it's over 144%, you're not going to be breaking it because the max that you can bring it down with the combination is 44%. So 150 you can't break, 170 you can't break, 190 you can't break, 210 you can't break. I mean, maybe with conviction and lower res and cold mastery right now, you can break a couple of these. But in general, once again, we're going to kind of ignore that for this. You can see all of the monsters that are not getting broken right here. And you'll just note so many monsters are 120, 130, 140 resistances. Cold immunes are a nightmare to try and break. If you have lower resist and you have conviction together, it's going to just maybe break some of these monsters. But again, that's such a difficult thing to combine just to deal a tiny bit of cold damage to the monster. Generally not worth it and not going to be something that you have. So if you look right here, look in this like first column, because this would be running with infinity, or this would be running with infinity. In the second column, this would be lower resist. You're just going to see way more no's than yeses, right? So many monsters just are not breaking at all, which is why infinity is not as useful with cold. Now let's jump over to fire, and you can see a massive difference. Look at how many mobs are breaking their fire resist when you have conviction. So many. Practically every single monster in hell that has fire, with the exception of a few, is going to break. So does an infinity make sense for a fire character? Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Once again, compare it to the cold, where almost nothing breaks. And once again, why is this true? Because you need to look at the resistances over here, and you can just see how many mobs have 140, 150, 160 res versus fire res. So many mobs are at 100, 110, 105, 110, 100, 100, 105, 105, right? Just a lot of monsters only have barely an immunity, and so you can just break it, and then you're good to go. And then we get to lightning immunes, where you get even more mobs that can break. Look in this second column. This is with conviction. There is one monster, two monsters, and that is it. There's literally only two monsters in the game in hell that will not break from lightning with conviction. And again, that's because they have 100, 105, 100, 100, 100, 120, 100, 100, 100, right? They all have the hundreds and very low hundreds, and so they're much easier to break. And this is why running lightning damage generally ends up being really strong and can be a little better for a playthrough and all of that stuff, because if you just have a low resist wand for your Javazon, for your Trapsin, for whatever, and you cast it on any monster, you're probably going to break its resistance and be able to kill it. Whereas if you're doing that as a cold character, you're probably not going to be able to break it. Now, cold is still extremely powerful against non-immune mobs, but just something to note right there. Now, am I saying the cold source isn't viable in hell? No, of course not. She's still very viable, but you're generally going to just skip the cold immune monsters, which is something we'll talk about here in a second. I just wanted to point out how insane it is and how much you're breaking stuff. And again, here's physical immunes. Note that you can break every physical immune with amp damage. And you can break a lot of poison immunes, but poisons definitely have more that cannot be broken for sure, right? So just something to keep in your mind, something to note when you're thinking about conviction and lower resist and playthroughs and all of these pieces and dealing with the immunities. And how it works with each of the elements. This is kind of a nice piece right there to just discuss because it gives you a lot of information. Now, once again, something I want to note and add to this is this does not include the affixes that can roll on uniques. So if you find a boss group of tainteds, you say, oh, I can break that, but that boss, the unique boss himself, is lightning enchanted, you're not breaking it. Because that's now 175 lightning resist instead of 100. And as we saw from up above, you are not going to be breaking that at all, right? So you have to note that having these affixes, stone skin, magic resistant, spectral hit, let's go to the top again for all of them, lightning, cold enchant, fire enchant, having these is going to make it so a lot of times they cannot be broken. So if you're doing the Ancients, let's say, Hell Ancients, and you come upon Talik, who normally you can break his immunity, his lightning, or Madoc, You can normally break his immunity. But he's lightning enchanted. Well, now you're not going to break it anymore because he's just going to have too much light resist. Or he's magic resistant. You're probably not going to break it again because once again, that's going to be plus 40%. So you have to really take note of that when you are fighting against these unique boss champs and stuff to see, will I be able to break it or not? And do I need to just move on? So all in all, I think that covers how immunities work, how to break them. And the best thing, or the last thing I want to talk about, is the simple avoiding of them. So we'll go to the Stony Field, which is notorious for having a lot of light immunes. Now, of course, I can wait and see. Conviction Aura, oh, it does break. Perfect. I can fight these guys and kill them, right? But let's say that I don't have that infinity, right? Let's say that I'm running around and I don't have it. I can either try and stab these guys and do physical damage, which my character still has some physical damage because she does have Eth Titans, and it does a little bit. But you can see it's pretty annoying. And let's say my character wasn't that strong. What's the best way to deal with these mobs? Just avoid them. I literally just run past them. Oh, those are lightning immunes. Those are lightning immunes. All right. Well, I know I need to get to the underground passage. So I'll just run along the wall here. And then I find the underground passage and I'm in the next area where then I can fight against mobs that I can deal with. And these are lightning immunes and I'm just going to avoid them. Or I can lower resist. Oh, that didn't break them? Okay, perfect. I'll keep moving forward. And this is really going to be your best strategy for a lot of the characters that you're playing through, especially if they're single element characters and you're having difficulty with them. You're a cold source and you can't break the cold immunity. Don't waste your time on it. Just move forward, get to the next step, and you'll be good to go and won't have any more issues. So with that being said, I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you learned a little bit about immunities from this. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace, YouTube.